Good afternoon, everyone. It's Shamila Ramjawan coming to you from the Red Corner Chat. This afternoon, I have a very inspirational guest, Nishani Ford. Nishani is a TED Talk and keynote speaker, life coach, author, global advocate for nonviolent places of work. That is something so interesting, and we're going to hear all about it today. Hello, Nishani.
Hi, Shamila. Thank you so much for having me this afternoon and for putting me in. I'm so honored actually to be chatting to you.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you got to say, because you seem to have such an impressive bio. And I was really intrigued when I read it, but I'm not going to read out too much on the bio because I want to hear it from you. Nishani, do you maybe just want to take us through who you are?
Yeah. So there's many labels, I guess, but in a nutshell, I'd like to say I'm a child of God. I'm a son of God. I'm a mom to two adult young men. I'm a change catalyst and a purveyor of hope. From a career perspective, like you said, I have a TED Talk. I'm very excited to be spreading a message of hope in the world. I have 25 years experience in the learning and OD space, both nationally and globally. And yeah, I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, I have a book published. So in a nutshell, I'd like to think of it as a diamond with many facets.
And a diamond you are, because you're doing such amazing work. Nishani, I'm very interested in this advocate for nonviolent places of work. I know we're going to go into lots of other stuff, but I mean, this has just caught my eye. Do you want to take us through that, exactly what it is, how you formed the organization, what the intention is, and how you're actually going to sustain that?
Yeah, so we've been talking a lot about South Africa, and many of you will have aware of the cliche, if you want to call it, of GBV, or gender-based violence. And the work that I do, and gender-based violence is a very, very important topic, don't get me wrong, but it deals mainly with the violence that is faced at home, which is domestic violence. What we fail to deal and to talk about and to address is the violence that is faced in the workplace, because there is violence in the workplace, and that can be sort of non-physical, even non-verbal. But what I do is I work in the place of prevention of sexual violence and abuse in places of work. Many organizations, many faith-based organizations, nonprofits as well, also work in the space of children. You know, we work with children, we work across the board. And who is protecting those children from predators? Who is protecting those children from even digital predators, you know? And who's protecting their constitutional rights when people are taking photographs or doing things that are, you know, not agreeable. I have found, I mean, you know, just a little case of where we were working in Soweto, and women were prepared to do sexual favors for a tin of fish. You know, that's how desperate the situation is. That's how desperate our plight is. And we have this power and vulnerability space where we have people who are vulnerable, because a hungry person is a desperate person, you know? And so you have this person who comes in as an aid worker or a Salvation Army or even a faith-based organization. And, you know, they can be sort of power differentiators, which means they will do favors in exchange for sexual favors. And it happens in the workplace. I mean, you know, we laugh about it and we say, you know what, she slept her way to the top, you know? But that phrase didn't come out from nowhere. I mean, it is an expectation sometimes in the workplace for women to exchange sexual favors, for people to experience bullying, discrimination, cyberbullying, group bullying as well. And all kinds of sort of exploitation in the workplace that goes under the radar because people are afraid to talk about it or have no platform to bring this up. And it is happening. And so we've got to address it. We really have to address it. So that is about the work that I do in the space of creating non-violent places of work. I do it globally at the moment. I work in over 90 different countries and set up a framework for an international INGO in the space of learning and development. So much in the space of preventative work. Yeah.
And how do you go about doing it? Is it sponsored, or, you know, how is it an organization?
So I have a consulting business, which I am currently launching. And basically, it's not a nonprofit organization. It's a consulting business, and I go in and I assist companies and organizations to set up measures, to look at their policies, make sure their policies are aligned. Because what's happening in the workplace is that it's being kind of swept under the HR disciplinary processes, and that's not enough. That's clearly not enough. And, you know, many women are victims of this type of violence in the workplace, which sets them back economically and to be able to move in their careers. So to answer your question in a nutshell, I have a consulting business where I have a team that we work together and we set up policies, we look at measurements, we look at the training aspect itself of this, and we look at how do we look at investigations. I'm also a trained investigator in the space. And how do we look at investigations? And then how do we actually provide tangible victim support that is actually going to protect the individual being impacted?
So do you find that people come forward when they are in such situations?
No. There are many barriers to reporting. People are very scared to come forward. And so you have to create an environment that's conducive to people wanting to report on this. I find that it's important to not to completely disrespect or disregard the HR stream, but to have individuals or champions that one could call focal points in the organization where people could report to. That would be a safe and confidential place. It's also important to understand that to keep the victims, alleged victims' details completely confidential, because sometimes it could be life-threatening. In some countries, we find that if we disclose who the victim is, that person can be killed by their family because, for example, rape in some countries is not allowed. If the girl is pregnant by a rapist, she's expected to marry that rapist within 30 days. Otherwise, her family will kill her. That is the reality that we are facing. So, no, it doesn't happen that people just speak about it under the radar, and it's happening very much being swept under the carpet, you know. So it's an important topic that we are having to deal with now. And I must say the Department of Labor in South Africa has now issued a a document for through the Employment Equity to look at code of good practices and some of the things that are important in the workplace and will become non-negotiables in terms of cyberbullying, bullying, and creating sort of safe and non-violent places of work.
So just take me through this, okay? You have a box close to the HR department in an organization where they prompt employees to put in any complaints or anything of that sort that they have, suggestions as well. So one would actually go and write something there where they probably had an encounter with a manager. How would this be addressed?
Okay, so the way that it works in terms of the process is that firstly, the management will need to get involved, and then there's an investigation setup that needs to happen, and that's a specialized space. So in terms of the investigation, there would be an investigation. If they find that the alleged perpetrator is actually, guilty of X or Y or some form of sexual harassment or abuse or bullying, then the HR processes also follow through. The investigative process happens outside of the organization, and usually it's a very objective investigative process where the victim is also and witnesses, etc. It happens just like a normal investigation. Then a recommendation is made to the chairperson of the disciplinary, and usually that then informs the disciplinary that needs to happen. If there is a criminal offense, example, a rape, then that needs to be reported as a criminal offense. As an example, let me tell you, so the Department of Labor, so our labor relations doesn't, if you get raped at work, it's called sexual harassment. It's not called rape, but it is rape. You know, so we've got to address these things in the workplace in order to make places of work safer. In order to make places of work safer.
Okay, so your message in that box doesn't actually, in the long term, it's not anonymous anymore because people have to come forth, you know, the perpetrator, the victim, and all of that. How does one deal with that in the workplace in terms of embarrassment?
Yeah, I think like any other process, it has to be kept quite confidential. That's why I'm saying it doesn't go directly into the HR stream. It goes into a management stream or something called a committee that will need to deal with this. And it is highly confidential because people's lives are impacted. And so it's not something that can be sort of just disclosed openly in the workspace. No, it has to be handled. That's why it has to be handled by specialists. Yeah.
Okay, I get it. Well, you know, for people watching, and if you are being bullied or you have some sort of encounters in the workplace, I would say it's always necessary to take it up with the HR or management because it could get worse. And, you know, we're living in a society where there's such, you know, people are vulnerable and then you have predators out there. So we have to all be careful as to how and where we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, oftentimes, and I'm speaking from personal experience as well, oftentimes you also get bullied to a point that you have to kind of leave the organization because it comes to a stage where nobody wants to deal with it and non-disclosures are then signed and people are kind of said, oh, you know, let's settle out of court, let's give you X amount of money, let's sign a non-disclosure and kind of let's sweep this under the carpet. That doesn't help the situation. Doesn't change anything. And again, if you're a woman, it sets you back because in terms of your career now, you're forced out of a role where you could have built a career stream, you know. And I don't think that that's acceptable. I think it's completely unacceptable in the world of work that we're living in. And it's violent. It's violence against women in a different space. So we're taking it away from being just at home into the workspace as well. Yeah.
Nishani, did you find that there are women out there or people out there that are actually scared to report such instances or incidents because of the fear of losing their jobs?
Yes. I mean, there is a whole power and vulnerability dynamic that happens. And I mean, when something happens, even if it's just a racism issue or racism comments, people are afraid to come forward because of the power differentiator. And because of the person can lose their job, and especially in South Africa, where our unemployment rate is so high, and it's difficult. It really is difficult, and we have a dynamic of over 60% of households are single mom households. And so, what does the single mom do? Does she keep quiet and just keep up with whatever is happening and grin and bear it, or does she speak up? And it's important. That is why it's important to create these streams, to create these measures, to support people to be able to speak truth to power in a way that doesn't, let them lose their job or let them be discriminated against. And this is what I do in the space of helping create a safe space to work. Yeah, it's well complex. So it's complex. It's not straightforward. It's not straightforward at all. Yeah.
So you're working in various countries as well. What's your take across the world on a project like this?
You know, the take across the world is that some countries are, you get to a certain country like India as an example, and they've got no cases to report, and you go, but that can't be the case. We know for a fact what's happening on the ground, and then you have to look at barriers to reporting. You have to look at what is stopping people from reporting, and mainly it's the shame aspect. It's the fact that this is happening to me, and I'm going to be labeled. And it's the same reason that most rapes are not reported in this country. and across the world. So across the world, we are having this. Across the world, this is a problem. And I think the more we get into, let's start talking about creating awareness, creating preventative measures, educating managers, creating policies in the workplace that address child protection, that address media, because some of the things that are happening right now is that we don't have sort of a media or a digital space that is safe any longer. Everybody's going on board. You can be sending a picture to somebody and suddenly it's on YouTube, you know, and you're exposed. And, you know, it could have happened at a, I don't know, a company dinner party, you know, where people got a little bit too friendly. But these things are happening. These things are happening. So it's not just violence at home, it's also violence in the workplace that we need to think about. We need to think about. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, because the world of work's changing. We're working in a far more digital space, and digital bullying is happening. Digital bullying is happening. Yeah.
Wow. I think bullying across is all spectrums, it's happening. Nishani, just on COVID-19, it's come, it's affected us, it's impacted us. How did it affect you?
Well, affect me personally. Yeah, COVID-19 has been quite a eye-opener, I think, for us in the world of work, and from a personal perspective as well. But I mean, there's many, I guess I'm an eternal optimist, Shamila, because, you know, there's many things that have happened. People have been sick that are close to me. We find ourselves locked in our homes. For me, it was a time of introspection. It was a time of saying, okay, what can I be grateful for? What can I still put forward out in the world? And so that is when I started. I actually wrote and published a recipe book because cooking seems to have been taken off. And I'm passionate about food, and I call it Abundance. And abundance is really about getting your buns to the kitchen, dancing, enjoying, and getting pleasure out of life. But I gave that away free during lockdown because I thought it was important to swim upstream, to swim against the stream. Where people were going into scarcity mode, I was saying, let's model abundance. Let's become the voices of hope out there. As much as this is a dark time for us, the gift that has come out of COVID is that we have a shared pain now in the world. You know, we all know what it's like to work, educate your children, and try and do everything that you need to do in a day. So we have the solidarity and a sisterhood that has joined us globally, and we have technology that enables that. So for me, I think there's been pros, but there's been cons, but there's also been lots of pros that have come out of this. And I think I've never seen a time where people are wanting to connect and wanting to be far more empathetic and compassionate in this world. Yeah.
Yes, it's actually so weird because we all are going through exactly the same thing across the globe, and we can share the same experiences, and we can talk about the same subject. You know,
Yes.
Everyone you speak to across the world is like, how has COVID affected you, or what have you done differently, or you know, did you keep busy? Did you keep mentally sane? Those kind of topics. But just going forward, I know you started something, a Facebook Live. Do you want to take me through that?
Yeah, I started the Facebook Live called Seeds of Hope. And really that is much like what we're doing now. It's a chat, and we do it sort of once or twice a week, and really trying to interview inspirational people who are making a difference in the world. And the reason that we bring it into people's homes is to really be a purveyor of hope. And again, it's to swim upstream and to say, you know what, I know this sucks. I know this is hectic, but you know, we're going to get through this together. And to just help people speak about pertinent topics. We speak about depression, we speak about suicide, but in a way that brings hope. That brings hope. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well done on that, and keep going. Hopefully you can interview me at some point.
I will. I have you on my list.
That would be awesome. Nishani, who inspires you?
You know, I still draw my inspiration from my folks, my parents. Both of them are late, but they've been really instrumental in in fashioning who I am. My dad was a informal coach, if you want to call it that, and he was a conversationalist. So every Sunday we would have visiting pastors or people from globally in our lounge. And in a time, I grew up where girls were in the kitchen, preparing the tea trays and things like that. My father would rather invite us into the conversation. And, we were talking, like traditionally people are told, oh, this is big people's talk, but not my dad. My dad invited us to converse with people, to ask questions, to ask provocative questions. And so he inspired me to do that. My mom, she was sort of an abundant woman, somebody who walked her talk. She always found a way. And I remember when my father lost his job, and she was a housewife, and she said to me, there's no such thing as unemployment. You make work. You make work and you find ways to generate income. And that's exactly what she did. She went from selling Tupperware and stuff like that to running her own business for 15 years with no education or anything like that. And for me, I just thought like, shit, that was wow. And so although they're not here, they've left a legacy of faith, but they've also instilled in me all the things that I want to bring into the world.
Wow, that's awesome. And look at the amazing work that you're doing now. So I take it that you're a good cook.
I like to think I'm a good cook. My children will tell you that they grew up on sandwiches, and that is very true. I only started cooking probably about 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
So just started about 3 or 4 years ago, and then discovered this passion for recipes. So now I cook all the time. I cook all the time.
Yeah, it's actually quite scary. I love cooking and baking, and the saddest thing is ever. The saddest thing is when you're trying to lose weight or you're trying to eat healthy, and then you think of baking this wonderful cake or trying out a new recipe, and then most of the time you end up eating the whole thing yourself. So yeah, but that's the challenges of being a mother as well.
And my second book now is exactly on that, because and as you get older, you can't digest this, you have to lose weight. So it's really about eating healthy, but still delicious. And I'm working on that passion project, as we speak. But food is a big part of my life.
So what type of recipes do you have in that book of yours, the first book?
The first one, it's a collection of recipes that are just favorites, but things that I've played with and things that I've made. And just all kinds of recipes, from cooks to bakes. And usually, for the lockdown, I thought of comfort food. So a lot of comfort food, a lot of traditional recipes, really like like the mini rice and the dry fish chutneys and all the traditional kind of things. Yeah.
Do you intend selling your book at some point?
At the moment, it's free and it's available. The second book I will sell, yes. Yeah. But the first is a seed, and I just want to sow it into people's lives.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'd like to get a copy of that book.
Sure.
Awesome. So, Nishani, is there anything else that you want to add?
We want to, I just want to say that I have lived experience and work experience that I bring together. And for me, the political is very personal. When we speak about gender-based violence, I have survived 13 years of abuse in every way or form possible. So I bring that experience, as well as all my professional experience and my studying and all of that stuff, and my years of working in the world of work, into a space where the offering is not just theoretical, but it comes to it is so practical that it's easily implementable, and it's from a ground and a grassroots level. It's very pragmatic. And I just want to say, it's important. It's important to know that this is not just a head thing, but from a heart and a lived experience. Yeah.
Do you want to share any of that?
Sure, Shamila. I met him on a ship, gorgeous as ever, gorgeous as ever, the most beautiful blue eyes, skin like a Greek god. And it was love, it was love. And we were married within sort of 9 to 10 months within that first year. And the first year of marriage was wonderful. And we were going to sail the world or, travel the world and just share God's love and have a big impact. And after, having my first little one, I brought my son home. He was 6 days old. And I put him down in the cot. And for the first time, he used violent words against me. And it shocked me because I didn't know what to do with it. My father, the only man in my life was my dad and my brother, and they were gentle beings, My dad had this look when we were kids that you knew you wouldn't cross the line, but he never used verbal or physical violence to discipline us. And so I didn't know what to do with that. And so I kind of went into shock, but long story short, it was 13 years. It was very violent. It was a space where, there was a time where I had a knife to my throat and I thought I was going to die in front of my children.
Oh my goodness.
It was really violent. Sort of being locked out of the house in the middle of winter in Johannesburg with a thin nightie on and sitting in the guardhouse, not knowing what to do. Just horrible, unspeakable things. And sometimes you do it just to keep the peace. And, you ask me like kind of, oh my God, why did you stay 13 years, And I guess for me, there were several things. Firstly, it was the shame aspect. Secondly, it was a failure because it was a mixed race marriage. And, everybody was like, oh, don't do it. And then you kind of like, oh, you don't want to be the only one divorced in your family. And
it's always the case as to what would the people say?
What would people say? You don't want to believe this is actually happening. So you go into the stages of grief, you go into shock, you go into denial. But in a nutshell, it's about this, you put a frog into boiling water, it will jump out immediately. But if you put a frog into cold, cool, beautiful water and slowly boil it, it won't jump out. It will just die. And I think for me, that's what happened. I was so hopeful. I was so in love. He was always trying to apologize and make it up. And before you know it, I had 2 babies and 13 years of my life had passed. And I had become a pro at makeup and, putting on a mask. And for many years, I wore a mask. And then 2 a.m. one morning, I wrote a poem. And can I say it?
Yes, of course, please go ahead. Yes, please.
Yeah, and it says, where are you? She screamed, trapped within a cage. I need to break free to be true to who I am. The woman in the core of my depth screams, set me free. Do I have the courage to let her go? Am I afraid of what her great freedom would mean to this world? Courage, courage, she screams, set me free to be magnificent, celebrated me. Thank you. So I wrote that.
Wonderful.
I wrote that at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. And when I turned around, I was looking at his face. But I didn't know who I was. I had completely disappeared. I turned into a whale. He called me a whale. So I was much, much bigger. And you do that. You do that to protect your physical body, And I didn't know who I was. And I was scared that my children wouldn't know who I was. And they wouldn't know who I laughed or, what it was for their mom to be laughing or anything, because I was constantly on eggshells. And I realized that was the start of the leaving and the start of the beginning of the end. So it took me 3 years to leave, though, because I couldn't leave. I wasn't financially stable. I wasn't financially okay. I was in a very, I hadn't studied when I was younger. So, I went back to university. I did 4 qualifications concurrently. And sort of by the time of those 3 years, I had applied for jobs and made sure that I was financially okay to be able to stand on my feet. But it took me 3 years to exit, and it was tough. It was tough. Yeah.
I have so many questions for you, Nishani. Well done on, how far you've come. But just going back a little bit, did you ever find out what triggered his entire personality change?
Yeah, yeah. The psychologist we went because we tried. We went for counseling. We went to church counselors. We went to professional counselors. All of those things, and he even went to a some kind of retreat for anger management. But they called it high chair syndrome. They said that when the children came on board, he didn't get the attention, and he wanted the attention. He was also an army man. He had a military background and a military family background. And so there was a lot of trauma that might have happened that was triggering it. But whatever the reason, it was no excuse. Whatever the reason, it was no excuse. And we did try to work through those things because I really wanted it to work. I guess I'm a hopeless romantic, but it just, eventually I thought I am going to die. I'm literally going to die.
Wow. Yeah. But, going through all of that, what made you leave? Or, how did you pluck up that courage to leave?
You kind of just, for me, it was my children. And I thought, like, they don't know who I am. I don't know who I am. They've seen this sort of skittish, and I was huge, and I had dark eyes, and I looked different, and I functioned differently. And I just thought, if I stay, they're going to think this is okay. They're going to think this is normal. And I didn't want that cycle to continue. So for me, it was important to leave for my boys. It took me 3 years almost after I left or divorced him to get them to treat me well. I remember they used to still like sometimes they used to use swear words on me, when they got angry. And they were young boys, 7 and 10 at that stage. And I used to take them to Mug and Bean for an ice cream or a milkshake and teach them how to treat me. When I remember taking my younger son to work with me, and I worked at one of the major banks, and the whole day I said to him, "How was it at work?" He said, "Mom, I had to open doors all day. I had to greet people, and I had to teach him that this is just good manners. This is how we treat each other," because they had no idea how to treat their mom. They were still wanting to treat me the way they saw their father treating me. And I had to spend 3 years with them, just teaching them good manners, teaching them this is not acceptable in the way that you talk to mom. And so it was tough. It was tough.
I can imagine. I can really imagine what you went through. Last year or the year before, I went to India and I spoke to some of the women in the slums in Agra, and same, the early marriages, teenage marriages, and then they get beaten by their husbands. They have nowhere to go because they're illiterate, and they stick through all the abuse. They're living in basically shacks where the children are living in the same place, in the same room, and then the father abuses the mother. I mean, we saw the one woman that had bruises from head to toe. She had a black eye. Young woman that would not even retaliate because she can't. He would most probably kill her. Yeah. So I can imagine what you went through emotionally, physically, and also with your children turning against you and doing what the father was doing because they thought it was right.
They thought it was okay. They thought it was normal. And I had to break that cycle, and I had to teach them, and it was hard. And I mean, I identify with some of those women in Agra because there were some nights that there was, you just keep quiet because you have to survive. You think if you die, what will your children do? You can't leave your children to this. So you just keep quiet and you don't retaliate and you disappear. You disappear. Yeah.
Well done to you. I mean, look how far you've come, and I'm sure you raised 2 really awesome boys. How old are they now?
They are now 22 and 19. Yeah, 22 and 19. Yeah.
Well, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, Nishani, and you've made a name for yourself, picking up the pieces, getting out there, studying, just growing and developing yourself. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. And, it's important to know as well that, when you're going through something like this and you come out of it, it's important to know that your story matters and your story can also heal. It is our I feel it's our responsibility to break the shame cycle and to tell that story, because for me, it was a chapter in my life. It happened. Yes, it happened a while ago, but you know what? It happened. And it's not my whole life. It's also not all of who I am. So it's a part of my story. It's a part of my journey. I'm not defined by it. And it's important for somebody going through this to know that it's just a chapter. It's just a chapter.
And what I like about it is you've actually now you're going out into the world to talk about it and to help others. So that says a lot about the person that you are, because you want to put a stop to this. And that's what all, the activists, the gender-based violence activists are about, because we want to go out there and we want to, tell our piece, and maybe we'll help somebody, we'll inspire them, and we'll give them advice as to what to do. So did you actually contact Department of Women in terms of, I know they have a program with gender-based violence now, and they're busy drafting a whole lot of policies. Did you ever get in touch with them to get involved?
Not yet, but it is on my list. I will do it. And I think it's very important that we do forge ahead with it, in terms of that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on board. And I'm so glad that Dr. Deshni Govender actually asked me to get you on the chat, because she nominated you to chat to me, because she said you are such an inspirational woman. She was actually going to come on and just to say a few words, but I don't think she's connected. But anything that you'd like to say to Dr. Deshni Govender?
Yes, thank you, Deshni. I am so glad our paths crossed. And I think that the lessons that I'm learning from Deshni are like, we are chicks. We are women who are holding each other's hands and raising platforms for each other. And I think that is so important. It's not only important because we are linked, but it's important because it's part of our heritage and who we are. So thank you for being one of those women that walks your walk, and for creating platforms for other women to shine. I think that itself is admirable. And thank you also for the work that you're doing, Dr. Jamila, because I think it's important that, it's just wonderful that you can give up a Saturday afternoon to create this platform to inspire so many people. So really, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's something that I'm so passionate about. I would give up my studying and my business just to do these chats. Like I said to you earlier, it's like having people in front of me, and that's what I love. I love the people connection because I feel creating the Red Corner chat, I have people right here in my room, in my Red Corner, which is amazing, because I really miss, COVID has come and just destroyed relationships, and it's done so much damage to us. And, this is when I decided to start the chat in August, but it's been amazing. And to chat to phenomenal women like you, or people like you, it's just, for me, it's a sense of fulfillment.
Yeah. And I just want to say as well, thank you so much. Thank you. But also that healing is possible. And there is hope. There's always hope. If you're in the middle of that place where you think you can't actually do anything, start with something small. Just start with sharing with somebody. Start with something.
I just want to ask you quickly, are you also from KZN?
Yes, I'm originally from the North Coast, so people would know it now in the La Mercy area. But I grew up in a little town called Desai, and if you blink, you'll miss it. And went to Tongan High, sort of matriculated in 1989. Yeah.
Well, so my sister actually lives right next to Desai Nagar in Zitites, and my brother-in-law was actually a teacher at Tongan High.
Oh, really? Really? It's a small world.
Yes.
Very small world. Yeah.
But Nishani, it was awesome chatting to you. Thank you so much for coming on board and sharing your life experiences. And I wish you everything of the best in everything that you do. And hopefully we will meet for coffee one day and see how we can work together and collaborate.
Great. I'm so looking forward to that. And thank you. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you. Have a good Saturday afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.